In the far south of Chile, the forces of wind, sea and ice unify to finally vanquish the most dominating presence in all of South America, the Andes Mountains. Here, the mighty mountain range collapses in a maze of fjords and islands before disappearing forever beneath the waves at Cape Horn. Life in this far-flung and remote corner of the earth is harsh. Only those that can endure its extremes of cold and wind will survive. Explorers of these blasted lands encountered not only amazing animals, but also the nomadic and mysterious people who hunted them. They created the legend of Patagonia, land of giants. And further to the south, Tierra del Fuego, land of fire. From here, they could go no further. Their journey had brought them to the end of the world. At the bottom of the southern cone of South America, a large claw of land marks the end of the inhabited world. The outer curve of the claw traces the decline and fall of the Andes. In the shadow of these mountains is the great plain of Patagonia. Nearly 600 miles north of Cape Horn, soldiers of the Chilean army are battling the elements and the terrain to complete a road. Building this road to connect the far south with the rest of the country has been the ambition of every modern Chilean government. But an enormous challenge looms for the engineers. They will need all their skill and all their modern technology to confront one of the world's most awesome natural barriers. Ahead of them lies the southern Patagonian ice cap. This is a region so hostile that it's rarely been crossed. It forms part of the largest body of ice in the world outside polar regions. This ice cap is remarkable. If found in the northern hemisphere, it would mean glaciers in Venice's Grand Canal or icebergs floating past the Statue of Liberty. During the Great Ice Ages, it swelled into an enormous ice dome that squatted over much of the southern Andes. Though the last ice age retreated 14,000 years ago, each winter is a vivid reminder of its icy oppression. When spring finally comes, it comes slowly. The sun's warmth forces the ice to unwillingly release its cruel grip. Each spring, it's as if another ice age has retreated, allowing life to safely return to Patagonia. Guanacos never left. They spent winter in large groups roaming the plain in search of ice-free grazing. Though the snow melts quickly, there is as yet no new growth. These large camels of South America can survive all of Chile's extremes, but recent Patagonian winters have been very hard on them. They wait for the change that's coming. Beneath the sheer 10,000 feet crags of Torres del Paine, a carpet of soft colour soon spreads over the plain. Waterfowl and other birds appear as if by magic. Some even fly in from distant parts of South America. During the brief span of spring and summer, all animals will be engaged in a race against time, a race to complete their breeding before the next winter, before their next ice age. The guanacos can now fill up on new growth. A pregnant female takes a dust bath, probably the first in a long while. For those that survive the long, hard winter, summer is a time of replenishment. The great richness that now becomes available on the plain attracts not just guanaco, but all the other wildlife. And it's this abundance of life which also attracted the first people. They reached Patagonia at the end of the last ice age. Having occupied most parts of the Americas, tribespeople had finally reached the end of the world. The plains were settled by people called Tehuelches and Onas. They were tall and strong and dressed in the skins of guanaco, which they hunted with great skill. They used the lasso-like bolas to ensnare their fleet-footed quarry, each animal yielding up to 200 pounds of lean meat. But just 100 years ago, new prey arrived on the plain. To the tribespeople, sheep were just white guanaco. But the sheep hunters became the hunted. Killing sheep was a crime punishable by death. Many were shot for no reason other than they were Indian. Their hunting grounds disappeared under a tide of wool. The most highly productive land was taken for crops. Profound change to the landscape had an equally profound effect on the native people. Many found themselves in settlements. It was usually with the best of intentions missionaries tried to Europeanize the plains people and shelter them from its excesses. But it was too late. These jerky pictures, taken on primitive film equipment, are some of the last images of a once proud people. Their vigor was cut down by a lethal cocktail of alcohol and disease. Their culture has disappeared forever. Hardy Corriedale sheep are now the inheritors of the plains. They cope well with the harsh winters. Yet among these sheep, some native wildlife survives. In Chile, rheas are called ñandus. They graze happily beside sheep. Both feathered and woolly grazers seem to have come to some sort of mutual understanding. Like its relatives, the ostriches and emus, ñandus have a rather curious breeding strategy. When a nest is established by a male bird, females from the area will come to lay their eggs in it. While one female adds her eggs to the clutch, others queue up waiting their turn. The female's maternal role ends with egg laying, which is something they may do in several nests. At the end of a week, there are more than 20 eggs, and no one to look after them. In fact, it's the resident male, who's never been far away, who now takes on the onerous task of incubating the eggs. By spreading his warm body and soft feathers over the clutch, eggs which may have been laid 6 days apart begin to develop at the same time. If all goes well, they should hatch together 40 days from now. Out over the plain, there are many well-concealed nests. And beneath each ñandu, there are many riches greatly desired by predators. But first, a predator must penetrate the male's defences. Lambs are just a nuisance. But when danger does threaten, he has an early warning system. Southern lapwings sound the alarm. This intruder would do little harm to the ñandu, but the hog-nosed skunk or chingay could make an easy meal of lapwing eggs. But the relentless alarm call has the desired effect. The skunk scuttles away into the grass. The male rhea is hungry and keen to stretch his legs, but lunch will be brief. In fact, he's so dedicated to nesting and moves away for such short periods that he's eating less than a quarter of his normal food intake. But even during his short break, he's observed. And so are the eggs. They're of little interest to the fox this time. Foxes are supreme opportunists found throughout Chile and cope with the harshest of winters. They're quick to take advantage of those that do not. The large winter groups of guanacos are now breaking up as a prelude to courtship and mating. Males patrol grassy areas, knowing that the fresh green shoots attract females, but they will evict any males that come near. Younger males constantly test and taunt the territory holders, leading them off on strenuous high-speed chases. But there is method in all this pursuit. It's a test of the territory owner's resolve and fitness. If he fails, then the youngster could claim his green sword and mating rights to the females. But not this time. After 40 days, the male Nyandu's long vigil is about to end. With his bill, he gently eases one of the first hatchlings from its shell. During the next few hours of synchronized hatching, his family will become much larger. It's not long before the newly hatched chicks are active. They'll soon prove an added liability. Having spent a month and a half incubating, the male is anxious to begin feeding. He must also take his growing family away from the nest. It's too well known to local predators. But he'll wait, only for 24 hours. After that time, they'll depart, abandoning any unhatched eggs. The Nyandu may have come to the end of his long vigil, but not to the end of his responsibilities. He has another 3 months of chick minding ahead of him. Though most of the brood have hatched and are mobile, they stay put while the male feeds nearby. His reserves of energy are by now very low. The chick's stripes act as camouflage. It may help to conceal them from most predators. But not the resident fox. Soon after the fox departs, so too does the Nyandu family. The travellers will now put some distance between themselves and the nest. Though the young chicks are slow and very curious about this wide new world, they're strongly bonded to the male and seldom stray far from his shadow. But devotion to Dad will not safeguard all of this little band of hopefuls. In the weeks ahead, they must race hard to mature before the coming of winter and to avoid the grasp of predators. The fox is now faced with cracking the problem of the unhatched eggs. Unable to bite the hard shell, the fox kicks the egg like a football at nearby rocks. And finally, a goal. Inside, there's a rich reward for skill and persistence. The grey fox's young family's also been on the move recently. Born at the end of winter, the cubs have not long emerged from the shelter of the den, but they're still young and stay close, sleeping and waiting. It's thought the ancestors of the grey fox crossed from North America more than 7 million years ago. The new continent shaped it into a new animal. In Chile, it is Zorochia. The father has not returned with anything to eat this time. The rear egg was consumed on sight. The cubs will know many days of hunger during their lives on the plain. For now, they bite their father and each other in romping, tumbling play fight. This play fighting is vital for fox cubs. It helps define family position and prepares them for life on the plain. The secret of the grey fox's success throughout Chile has been the breadth of their diet. They will eat anything and everything they can catch or scavenge. The crested caracara, or carancho, is also a scavenger. They range widely over the Patagonian plain. The chicks are close to fledging, but some still insist on taking far more than they can chew. For all wildlife, time is running out. As the short summer progresses, the need to raise young before the onset of winter has added urgency. And the guanaco are no exception. All female guanacos on the plain give birth within a few days of one another. Within a few minutes, a young guanaco, called a chulengo, is struggling bravely to find its feet. A chulengo must become active as soon as possible. Birthing time can be a dangerous time. A mother is dedicated to her baby. She's very aware of anything that might threaten it. And she also listens for a special high-pitched call from other mothers. That call signals danger. Though shy and wary, pumas are deadly predators found throughout Chile. And chulengos are their main summertime prey. Again, the southern lapwings sound the alarm. The puma is discovered. For the moment, the chilengos are safe. But it may be different after dark. At night, the plains and mountains belong to the puma. This predator may well provide a reason why guanaco births take place in a short space of time. By flooding the market with young, there's too much food for the puma, so more chilengos may survive. The bad winter has meant that many chilengos were born underweight. It makes their race to be big and strong enough to survive winter even harder. In this race, only the fittest will win. The casualties of summer become the bounty of keen-eyed giants. They have one of the largest wingspans of any bird in the world. Condors endlessly soar the vast Andean solitudes in search of carrion. They come from near and far, using keen eyesight to follow others to the feast. Usually last to arrive are male condors, with their prominent combs and pendulous wattles. They're far more aggressive and will bully others away from the corpse. Given the choice, they favour the soft innards. Condors are not pretty animals, and neither are their scavenging habits. They will gorge themselves until unable to take off. The head and neck are bare of feathers, making it easier to keep clean after a particularly gory meal. Having launched their chilengos into the world of the plain, guanaco females come into season once more. Compared to the frantic activity around birthing time, copulation seems almost leisurely. The act induces the female to ovulate, and there'll be another spate of chilengo births after the next long winter. The Andes Mountains continue south to the tip of the continent. The peaks are beaten and scarred by the gouging, grinding punishment they've received from many glaciers. The most remarkable thing about these glaciers is that they exist so close to those plains where guanaco breed and condors feed. It's also remarkable that some can plough their monstrous paths all the way to the ocean. Glaciers exist here because the Andes, though shattered and broken, are still a mighty force of nature. As moisture-laden clouds race around the bottom of the world, these 10,000-foot mountains are the only physical barrier. Each year, the winds drop up to 400 inches of moisture in the mountains. But because of their impressive height, it falls as snow. And snow is the source of all glaciers. But it must be snow that does not melt. High in these mountains, it builds up, layer upon layer, year after year. This is the key to the origins of these monsters of nature. Squeezed and compressed by the huge weight from above, millions of tons of ice is forced onto these grinding, white conveyor belts that move relentlessly down. Immense pressure forces the ice to break up into a maze of crevasses and seracs. At the top of the mountains, glaciers are created in extreme cold. Yet just a short distance below, it's mild. Here at their snouts, the glaciers disintegrate, often spectacularly. But these monsters are also highly sensitive. They swell or shrink, advance or retreat, responding to small changes in temperature. So if the planet is warming, these glaciers of South Chile should tell a unique tale. High above a rock amphitheater, ice and water surges from a retreating glacier. Southern Chile has its share of glaciers in retreat, some at a fast rate. But the pattern doesn't seem to be either universal or straightforward. The global rise in temperature at the end of the last great ice age 14,000 years ago caused a glacial retreat so massive that most of South Chile was liberated from the crushing tyranny of ice. Everywhere there are signs of that last major retreat. Highly polished rock faces and deep valleys are testament to the enormous power of glacial destruction. A glacier in retreat leaves behind piles of rocky debris. This debris, called moraine, is the raw material that nature uses to stage a remarkable recovery. At first, it's sterile. No plants grow. Mosses and lichens are some of the first to return. As the years pass and the moraine becomes more enriched, other plants follow. They include a small gunnera. Its trick is to take nitrogen from the air to help it survive in this extreme location. Then, given time and the help of birds to spread seed, plant life will climax in the growth of a new beech forest. Some beech forest is being destroyed, knocked down by glaciers on the move. Why are some glaciers now ploughing back down tracks they haven't travelled for thousands of years? The answer could be because the planet is warming. It seems that the warming of the planet is bringing more moisture to Patagonia. And this additional snow could be triggering some glaciers to advance, But a late summer snowfall can cause a far more dramatic advance. An avalanche comes without warning. It moves like the wind. It pushes a wall of air in front, smashing everything in its thundering path. Devastation like this was the work of a powerful spirit called Mowono. He roamed the tops of the mountains, using avalanches to destroy those who came too close. This is what people of the southern fjords believed. These people lived in remote glacial valleys to the south. The first European explorer to venture through these blasted lands was Magellan. Seeing their fires lit on the beaches, he named it Tierra del Fuego, land of fire. The inhabitants of this place were the southernmost people in the world, the Yagans. It had taken many generations to slowly migrate down from the top of this great continent. Here, at the end of their journey, they found many animals to hunt in a vast maze of bays, beaches and islands. Sea lions were certainly hunted. The Firelanders could paddle their tree bark canoes to any number of rocky islets where sea lions hauled out. Some of the people wore sea lion skins. Others smeared blubber on their bodies as protection from the cold. And the meat was highly prized. Cormorants were hunted at night as they slept on their nests. There were always plenty of kelp geese browsing on rocks close to the kelp beds. And like these sturdy geese, Firelanders found much of their food needs among the kelp. Tethering their bark canoes to the kelp fronds, women would plunge into the icy waters. The cool Antarctic currents are rich. The Yagans gathered a great variety of marine life. And while the women swam below, above, the menfolk attended to the hunting of otters and of birds. Further south is the Beagle Channel. It was named after the ship the Beagle, which visited here in the 1830s. Aboard was Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, who was not at all impressed by the Yagans. He noted, "They are the most abject and miserable creatures I anywhere beheld. One can hardly make oneself believe that they are fellow creatures and inhabitants of the same world." But if Darwin had stayed and observed the Yagans, he would have discovered an astonishingly rich and varied culture. They had developed a vocabulary of over 30,000 words, almost all of them alluding to the power of nature in their lives. Seasons were defined by natural events. Spring was egg time. Summer, gulls flying time. Autumn, beech leaves reddening time. And winter, Sun-Man hiding time. The buff-necked ibises signalled the arrival of the equinoctial gales. Dolphins whistling was a warning of impending storm, so finding shelter was urgent. The Yagans were to suffer a similar fate to that which befell the other tribes of Patagonia. They lacked resistance to introduce disease. Measles decimated whole communities. There may have been a little truth in Darwin's disparaging comments, however. By the time he arrived, the sealers had done their bloody work in these parts. The Yagans had already lost their main hunting species. Alcohol and despair did the rest. Today, these two women are the only pure Yagans left in the world. They alone can understand and converse in that descriptive and lyrical language of their people. They reminisce of the time when they were canoe children, a time before their families were cut down by disease. At Isla Navarino, on the edge of the Beagle Channel, they paid their respects to their kinfolk, many of whom died half a century ago. If these two women don't succeed in passing on what they know of Yagan culture and lore to their mixed-breed children and grandchildren, it will disappear forever. The fires that Magellan first saw are now virtually extinguished. But other flames burn brightly. Oil, the latest resource to draw people south to Patagonia. As oil provides almost half of Chile's energy needs, its importance to the country cannot be underestimated. Flimsy bark canoes once sailed freely back and forth to the bottom of the world. Now, only the Chilean Navy has sufficient resources and logistical backup to support such journeys. The Navy has been sailing these waters since Darwin's day. They know intimately this maze of islands, fjords and channels. Their destination, Cape Horn. As they travel south, the height of the Andes Mountains declines dramatically, and so does their power over life. Here, more and more creatures are from the sub-Antarctic Ocean. When food is found, giant petrels spread their wings and shriek aggressively at their neighbours. These vultures of the frozen seas fly vast distances in search of carrion. Albatrosses also glide the powerful winds at the bottom of the globe. The shelter of the Beagle Channel is taken advantage of by a black-browed albatross. Though this channel was well used by canoe people, the names given to its landmarks by European explorers reflect their experiences here. Useless Bay, Port Hunger, Desolation Island, Deceit Island. To reach world's end, the shelter of mountains and islands, all that remains of the Andes, must be left behind. The great southern ocean is a fearsome place. To early sailors, it was a nautical vision of hell. On the 7th of March 1741, Commander Lord George Anson on a Royal Naval expedition wrote in his log, "We had such tempestuous weather as greatly surpassed in danger all seas known in any other part of the globe. This filled us with continual terror." At the turn of the century, up to 10 ships a year were wrecked on the remote and rugged coasts near Cape Horn. The journey ends here, at the world's most notorious landmark. It's one of the Chilean Navy's most isolated outposts, resupplied once every 3 months. Sailors keep watch over one of the world's most important shipping lanes. Cape Horn is just 500 miles from Antarctica. It's where the Atlantic and the Pacific, the world's two mightiest oceans, meet. It has a reputation as the stormiest waters in the world. Rapid fronts and squalls continually sweep in from the ocean wastes, blasting everything in their path. It's difficult to imagine how canoe people like the Juggans could have conceivably battled their way south to hunt penguins at Cape Horn. But they did. Magellanic penguins come ashore every day of the short summer on this beach at the very end of the world. And why not? They nest in many places round the southern cone of South America, and Cape Horn is just another safe haven. They too must breed during the short southern summer. But here, it's less of a race against time than elsewhere. Here, the penguins experience all the seasons of the year, several times a day. They hide away from the squalls in burrows under the thick tussock grass at the back of the beach. Beyond the tussock grows the southernmost forest in the world. This forest in miniature that barely reaches knee height shows that the wind, the sea, and Antarctica beyond dictate life at Cape Horn. Even the Andes Mountains, which have for so long towered above the South American continent, must finally bow to the great Southern Ocean. After an extraordinary 3,000-mile journey through Chile, the two opposing forces, the ocean and the mountains, which have created so much of the country's character, finally meet at the end of this land of extremes.